Well, hello and welcome to the show, cyber gurus, script kiddies, and everyone in between. Today we have a good one. Today we have two cybersecurity podcast juggernauts here to discuss the great cyber divide. No, that's not a new reality show. It's a play on words describing the sometimes frustrating gap between cybersecurity vendors and their customers. So buckle up, grab your popcorn, and let's dive into the digital trenches with George and George of Bare Knuckles and Brass Tacks. Episode 5, The Great Cyber Divide. Welcome to the Cyber Distortion Podcast. This is now Season 3, Episode 5. Man, we're finally making some traction again. Just came back from a little bit of a break, but we're excited tonight. We've got some special guests with us in the house that are also podcasters, fellow cybersecurity podcasters. George and George, for those of you that have never listened to their podcast, it's called Bare Knuckles and Brass Tacks. And it's a podcast that focuses on the human side of the relationship between security vendors and security customers. And it's a very interesting take, and I like what you guys are doing. It's a very cool twist, and we're going to get into some of why it means a lot to me and Jason, because our backstory kind of goes right down the same path. So I'm excited to get into it. Jason, I'll throw it over to you, and we'll get into the meat of this.
Yeah, man. I mean, super excited for this, guys. So welcome to the Cyber Distortion Podcast. We can dive into everything that we could possibly dive into to get our audience more aware of who you guys are. But, what I really like to start with is just listening to what your backstory is. I know Kevin and I have one, but what brought you two together and even more so brought you two together around doing a forum like this? Like what made that impetus really happen for you?
Yeah. Well, first off, very happy to be here. Thank you for having us and for the invite. So I was working in marketing on the vendor side, and I somehow socially engineered my way into inviting George A., now my compatriot, to an event that we were hosting at Black Hat. But, I had gotten a lot of people there, and I didn't send a single email. It was all through relationship building that took a long time. And lo and behold, this cat shows up, and he was like, all right, tell me what you're about. I was like, this, that, the other. He's like, cool, send me some stuff. If it works out, we'll do a demo. Great. It was like the most candid interaction I had with a CISO to date. And then we were just talking about, if I think the term we came up with is if we could just all acknowledge the dance instead of like me pretend that the CISO is here for any other reason other than I invited him and that he's getting anything out of it other than like this is a vendor event. And I don't know, he left the event, and then it was like a day later, I think I texted him. It was still Black Hat, and I was like, hey, remember that podcast idea we were talking about? I was like, I'm George on the vendor side, you're George on the CISO side. Like, this thing writes itself. We should do this. And that was pretty much it.
I need to offer some further context, because George gave a very PG version. It was Wednesday, so it was trade show floor day, and I was there. Right. I recall. No, I wasn't with my CIO for that one. Was I with my CIO last year or the year before? Was I with him that year?
I don't think you were that year.
No. So it was 2 years ago. So it was me, and I brought my SOC manager with me, and we had gone through, and we had a whole list of objectives in terms of shops we wanted to talk to. We wanted to connect with all of our current suppliers and then look at a couple of their shops. And it's a busy day. It's exhausting. I had the CISO summit the day before. You get 2-3 hours of sleep a night at Black Hat if you're doing it right, or any major conference really. Yeah. So I showed up to George's event with I shit you not, guys, and sorry if I swear to your audience, I think there was maybe 10 minutes left. There was enough time to get like one drink at the bar. And I remember in the 5 minutes we had to get a drink, I got a drink. And George doesn't even drink. He's clean. Like I'm the one that's like exhausted and drinking. And we had that like interaction of just like, hey man, there's like no time left on the clock. What is going on right now? What is this thing? Cool. You're a cool dude. Miko, your guest of honor, is kind of a cool dude too. Like it was just because of how exhausting the entire experience was. Both of us were just like, ugh. And it almost like a diamond forming in the rough of that stress and exhaustion. We actually had a real conversation, and two people actually connected, and that's kind of where the beauty of this whole thing happened.
Yeah,
That's
man,
awesome.
that's so crazy. I do like this. I like how George K. I like how you started up with saying I kind of like social engineered George A. into this thing, and there's a story to that I'll share with you guys later. But it's so synonymous in some ways. But go ahead, Kevin.
No, I know exactly what you're thinking, man. I was going to let you go ahead and kick that story off if you wanted to.
All right, yeah, I'll tell it real quick. So Kevin and I have been, we've been partners, friends in the industries we serve for many, many, many years, and along the lines, somewhere along the lines, Kevin, got a CISSP, was going to Black Hat, DEF CON, had been doing it for a little bit, and says, "Oh, dude, man, you really got to start coming to these things." We have served on boards and other committees for many years prior to this, and he's like, "Man, this is the next thing. You really need to start doing this." I'm like, "No, man, I don't have time for that." Well, Kevin was relentless and just pulling at my strings nonstop and figuring out what the next little thing would be to get me to go. And finally, I caved and I started going. And once I started going, I was hooked, and I really started digging into it, and really, and I'm grateful because at the end of the day, it made me better at what I was doing with my organization and made us much, much, much more, I mean, to the nth degree cyber aware. Eventually, I got my CISSP and I kind of went along the same paths, but this is all because of Kevin's persistent to keep bringing me in and pulling on my strings to get me to do it. So some huge similarities there.
Yeah, it works out though. Being persistent and
Nice.
being kind of a pain in someone's ass long enough, eventually they kind of come around and they're just like, all right, cool. Or they block you, which can happen on the other end of things.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the reality. So, like, if I can recall correctly, George and I have been doing the thing on LinkedIn. You sort of circle one another, you
Yeah,
like each
yeah.
other's content, there's a post, whatever. You get those notifications, and then you're making this list of people who you think might be going to Black Hat and who are you going to invite to your event. And then you send that DM, and you're like, "Did I just torpedo this fragile thing that we had on LinkedIn?" And I try to phrase it pretty openly, like we're holding this thing. There's like no obligation. We got a cool speaker. Come on by if you can. And I remember even in the DM, George was like, "Yeah, no, it's cool. Like I've been following you for a bit. That's like cool." So like again, there was that acknowledgement, that open thing of like, let's just this is the
Yeah.
dance. This is what we're doing. And
Well,
yeah,
I think
and
the
honesty
important thing
too.
though is like in those content exchanges, like be it LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever it is. Like I remember specifically, I found the stuff that George had to say fundamentally interesting, and he wasn't like pushing stuff on it. He was just engaging with things that I was either engaging with myself, or like he was commenting on my stuff or whatever it is. But it's just more like you get on that comment stream, and if you post comment on a thing, someone else comments on it, it'll pop up on
Yeah,
your
yeah.
notifications. Every once in a while, if I have a second, and I see something pop up, I'm like, cool. What are the replies? And if you're the guy or gal who's constantly saying interesting things that are having thoughts of value, you don't have to push anything. Like I'm just gonna, or any sensible person is gonna
Mm-hmm.
think you're a worthwhile person having the network. It's not always a value exchange. I'm not looking at it like what am I gonna
Yeah.
get out of it. I'm looking at it like you're a smart dude with smart ideas, and maybe just maybe one of those ideas might resonate with me. But either way, my time on social media is better spent surrounded by people like you than by the junk pushers as usual.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, instead of like him sharing some article about a breach and then jumping in to say like, that is interesting, George A. Did you know that with our solution, you know, like
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, you
always
kind
like,
of come off George K as somebody who I wouldn't think is super high pressure about anything. You kind of seem pretty chill and laid back, and you guys, it's obvious when you're
yeah,
listening to you both, you have that relationship of respect, and you have that relationship of just trust, and you feed off each other a bit in your episodes. You know, like you've known each other, and I don't know how long you guys have known. How long have you guys known each other, by the way?
I mean, this fall after Black Hat will mark the third season, so it's
Oh, okay.
going on 3 years.
But he is right. Like in our, we got like a good like WhatsApp chat going. Like we pretty much talk every
Yeah,
day. And what I could say is there's genuinely a spirit of like mutual
yeah,
support. Like if George does a
Yeah,
good thing, like when he built Mind Over Cyber, like I got nothing to do directly with Mind Over Cyber. I obviously support it. I support the events when I can, but that's George's project with our other friends Carlos and Maria. But I'm still a huge fan of what he's doing. I'm a huge fan of like, you know, when he went through some, we'll say some career transitions. I'm still in there telling him like, I think you're a brilliant marketer. I think you're really talented. Like, I'm going to gas you up as much as I can, and I genuinely believe that. And you know, when you go like you guys said, the friendship to it. There's the show. It's cool. It's great. We have a regular schedule, but also like if you happen to think of each other as genuinely cool people, like we tell each other all the time, man. Like if I got time this summer, let's go down. Let's pick a weekend. Let's go
Yeah.
yeah,
camping.
yeah,
Let's go like have a
yeah,
good
yeah.
time. Like you're a cool dude. I think if you have like real connection and real friendship at the core of what you're doing, it's always going to
Yeah.
be a good time.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's no way to sustain this thing. I mean, we do this weekly. So we like build a lot around it, and it's not an insignificant amount of time to, you know, you guys know, guest scheduling, edit, all
It's a
that.
ton of work.
That steam would
Oh
have
yeah.
worn out a long time ago if we didn't
Well,
have each
and
other.
here's a key thing
So,
to that too, though. If you guys stopped podcasting tomorrow, it's obvious you're going to remain friends, and you got you've built
yeah,
a lifelong friendship at
yeah,
this point. That's important, and that
yeah. The
Right.
second half of the WhatsApp thread that's not just griping about nonsense is just sharing photos of post-workout meals.
check out all this
so
protein, man.
so another commonality with Kevin and I is the fact that Kevin was and is still is my customer in real life. And so
Oh, nice.
not around cybersecurity, but around the other stuff that we in the same industry that we service. And we just have this passion around cybersecurity that we both having these technology backends and and came together around this common cause. But we first came together because we served the same industry, and as this customer and service provider relationship, we found common ground like you guys did on the things that we were talking about, and it started with common ground around technology standards within the industry we served and why that was important. And we both have passions around making a difference. And then that passion around making a difference just kind of continued to snowball into cybersecurity and really the things that matter the most. And so it's so interesting how synergistic like those commonalities are with how you guys came together and what Kevin and I have done as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then it kind of segues into the next thing I wanted to talk about, guys, is basically, growing podcasts. That's not easy. We all know that. There's a ton of work that goes into that. We all have, I feel like minimal time to give to these projects like podcasting because we all have a full-time job on the side of this. And it's a
yeah,
lot of work. But in addition to just running your podcast, I see that you guys are doing a whole lot to give back to the community. And that's what we originally decided. Let's create a podcast so that we can give back. And I see that not only do you guys have that good chemistry and that good flow in the way that you guys present your content, but also you guys do it in a caring vibe. You guys do it with a lot of heart, a lot of compassion. It means a lot to you. That comes out in the way that you guys deliver. And Jason and I said early on, hey, dude, let's do this. And regardless of whether this thing goes anywhere, and regardless of how big it goes or how big it gets, because that's secondary to our purpose, And the purpose is to give something back. And if somebody takes something from this, awesome, dude. We've done something good.
Yeah.
So I see you guys doing the same thing. And, I guess that just kind of takes me to the next question I wanted to ask you guys is, when this is all said and done, Bare Knuckles and Brass Tacks is done, you guys decide to hang up the gloves, so to speak. What do you guys value the most? What do you want people to take away from it? And what do you want them to think of when they think of Bare Knuckles and Brass Tacks and the two Georges?
I think we always ask ourselves before every episode, and as we're like going through the questions, is somebody going to learn one new thing out of this, right? And that's why we called the second half of the show Brass Tacks. Like, we don't want to admire the problem. There's a lot of that in cyber as it is. So as long as people get something out of it, and also I would like to be remembered for just like being that we're unafraid to just call out the shit. So we might come at you with fists if you're headed in one direction, but for the listeners, we got nothing but hugs.
Yeah. And a takeaway, which is your Brass Tacks piece of it. Yeah. Got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the biggest thing that I want people to take away from it is the fact that, we have interesting guests every week. We select them because they're doing good work in a different way than the industry standard, which is like plain and boring and insufferable for the most part. And like that content is what it is. I think what I would like people to get away from this is the spirit of, two friends in this industry trying to make sense of this whole thing, trying to make sense of this madness, and trying to have a good time. I've always been a big believer of the rule, and it's not to say that there aren't tough days. Lord only knows there's tough days in this job, but like generally speaking, I don't want to do anything in my life if I'm not having fun. If I didn't have fun doing this job, I wouldn't do it. If I didn't have fun doing the show with George, I wouldn't do it. And that spirit of just having a good time, having fun, and getting enjoyment out of the labor, I want people to remember us for that no matter what, we had a good time. So hopefully our listeners have a good time listening to us. So when I, 20 or 30 years from now, listen back to some of these episodes, I can remember when I was like young and silly and didn't know nothing. But at least I had my buddy. We had a good time. We had a good show. We met some interesting people. We made the thing memorable.
Yeah,
That's important.
Those are all good foundational attributes to hold on to, because it does make a difference. And I like hearing you, both of you kind of articulate what that really means to each one of you, because the value you put on that is the value that resonates in your show. And I think that's kind of evident, especially when you have guys that have a partnership and friendship all in the same thing, right? That it becomes genuine. But here's the thing, right, guys? I really think the perspective you bring in your conversations is fairly unique. And the reason for that is because it's this combination of the vendor and the customer's perspective of a topic. And that's not something you just normally get in a podcast, right? And you guys said something awesome a few minutes ago when you're talking about how your relationship started. You referred back to, these conversations you're having on a LinkedIn post, right? Which we all know how they work, right? Vendors sends you a message and says, "Hey, I really like your profile. Really like what you guys are doing. Maybe we should talk," right? And you get into this. As soon as I see that, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I don't even want to talk to this person. Why are they even hitting me up?" But there is a difference in the approach, in the openness, in how your guys' relationship started in that light, and being able to have a real conversation between those two parties about a topic has huge value, because there's no pressure, right? It's just an issue or a topic and possible solutions, and either you got something good or you don't. And if you don't, great, whatever, but let's at least share and figure out what we can do better. And I think that in that aspect of your show and what you guys bring has a lot of unique value to it. But if you was to look at that, what would you say would be your best advice for how a healthy relationship between the vendor and the customers should really be, and how how you guys see that working?
It's a good question. So maybe there's a lesson in how we approach the podcast. So when we started 2 years ago, the opening was, this is the cybersecurity podcast about the vendor customer divide. Now, if you listen to the most recent episodes, it's actually changed. It's like, this is the cybersecurity podcast about all the messy human bits behind the business, trust, respect, and all the rest. And that is because we listened to the audience. I think we came in with that initial idea that there is this divide between customers and vendors. But as we started building more episodes around issues outside of that and saw a lot of traction with the audience, that's what we got at. And so this is all to say, like, to answer your question, Jason, I think it's about human connection. It sounds super cliche and super amorphous and like hard for, like, you say that and a sales team's going to be like, well, that's not scalable. But I don't know how you don't do it, because that's what the entire industry is predicated on. People buy from people. You can't tech your way out of that. It could look cool, and George has seen some cool tech, and then he either hates the people or they try to pull one over on him, and then the trust just like collapses, and there goes the deal. So I don't know. The short answer is that human connection just takes a really long time. And it takes constant activity, constant nurturing, cultivation. But I think you just have to be like curious about people. Like, oh, you're a practitioner here. Like, oh, I don't know anything about fintech. Like, what does that entail? And just be a human.
Well, yeah, like I always say to people, like I'm an athlete, so like I use a lot of sports cliches. But play the man or woman. Realistically, if you're a seller and you know your product, or you know your software, you know your service, know it enough to be dangerous, so you can speak to it off script, right? So you can ad hoc it. It's naturally in your language. And then from that point, it's really just about how do you make friends? How do you go to a party and make friends? Right. Like I work in a dating space. I worked in bars for like 10 years. I understand, we'll say how people connect, to put it kindly. And I do a lot of parallels between like dating and the cyber sales. I mean, the climax is different, but the process is kind of the same, right? So like, like if you're super weird and you come on too strong way too early, that you're going to creep people out just the same.
Yeah.
But if you have like a healthy dating relationship, they're going to take you out to dinner. They're going to take you to a cool show. They're going to do a cool thing with you. And then, eventually, if all circumstances are right, then you guys close a deal, whether it's 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, whatever it is. So, it's the same kind of logic. At the end of the day, and this is why I talk about, like, I carry certain vendors with me shop to shop. It's because I like the software, but I also like the people I work with. So just because I move employers doesn't mean I want to stop working with my people. It just means I'm going to find a way to get them into the environment that I just inherited. And that's, I think, how good business goes. And it happens that way on the practitioner side. When you become a leader, like, there are folks, when the day comes when I go to my next shop, I have like probably a good 15, 20 people that I could call up from previous employments that'll come with me wherever I am. As the opportunity is right, they'll come with me just because they want to re-spark the magic of working together. And I know that sounds super cliche, but at the end of the day, people don't quit bad jobs. They quit bad managers. And if you're a good leader, people want to come with you wherever you go. The same thing in sales. If you are a good salesperson and you treat your customers right and you're fair to your prospects, everybody's going to want to do business with you. Even if your product isn't Gartner's top class or whatever it is, you yourself are the representative of that product, of that company. So if you are a good representative, you will speak to that. And a good example of that, just to throw it out there, our friend Kayla at Drata, absolutely revolutionary in how she approaches things. I had no clue what Drata were before I met her, and she tried to pitch to me in her ways. I didn't have the time, or it wasn't the right time for it. But I told her over 2 years, hey, when the time comes, I'm going to you, and I've kept to that promise. That's an example of playing the man and doing a prospecting and building that relationship properly.
And I mean, this may be outside the scope of your question, Jason, but what George is pointing to is this larger shift in the market, which is not really being recognized, or maybe is like just beginning to be recognized, is that the way CISOs buy has changed, and they congregate and they talk to each other. And that's not just CISOs, practitioners. They're trying to learn from one another. They're trying to build their own networks. Well, inevitably inside those networks, they talk about the people who treat them well. George has shown me his inbox once, and he had like 60 emails from this one rep in like a 3-month span, which is abusive at some level. And he's like, I don't even care about this technology. I am never going to do business with this person because this sucks. And that person has, that rep, poor thing, has no idea. Not only has he just like lost that account before he even got in the door, and I know that rep is a he, but if he's being talked about and George is very connected, he may have like blown his whole territory without even knowing it. And meanwhile, I mean, like look at the comic book frame. Meanwhile, back at the Batcave, he's talking to his CRO and he's like, I don't know why they're not responding. And somebody's being like, send more emails, do more calls. And it's like, no, man, you're missing the point. You're missing the point. The gates are closed and your name is Mud. So I'm sorry.
So that's, that to that same point, that you're right. I believe that it took a long time for people to kind of get to that style of learning that the relationship is important, and forming a good relationship will breeds trust. And if you establish solid trust, then you can have a real conversation. And a customer is more likely to say, here's my problem. I don't know if you can fix this, but I'm coming to you first because I have that trust.
Exactly.
We form that relationship.
That goes right back to what George A was saying. I mean, there's a bit of, you're building not just trust in your that relationship. It's a loyalty factor. It's like, hey, they've treated me right over the years, and they've always come through. And it's not always about having the right answer to the technical problem. It may just be, hey, I'm going to bounce this off you. May not get anywhere. You may not have the answer to my problem, but you have connections too, and I trust where you're going to send me. So,
what's crazy too is that trust is a conductive material, which is to say that, Jason, if you refer somebody to Kevin, immediately the barrier to entry is way lower for that seller. And to call back to our friends Carlos and Maria, I'm in a regular text thread with them too. These are two sellers. Maria works for a MSSP. Carlos works for like an auditing and compliance firm. They do pen testing. They do, SOC 2, all that. They trade quote unquote leads back and forth, but it's really just like, hey, I was talking to one of my customers and they really need to get like ready for SOC 2. I'm just going to, send them over the fence to you. I'm going to make the introduction. I have watched these two probably trade like $250,000 in deals between one another. And the deal velocity for the sellers out there is quite a bit faster because you didn't have to do all the outreach just to win the trust. Somebody was like, oh, friend of Maria's a friend of mine, and vice versa. And it's really incredible to see. It's like sort of a pioneering new method, but it takes a lot of ground game. It takes like constant vigilance, constant effort. And I think that's what is missing, is people think that there's just some easy button. Like I'm going to plug into outreach and Sales Loft and I'm just going to automate all my outreach. Well, the problem with automating stupid is you just do dumb things faster. You don't do them better.
So we got to keep in mind though, I don't think this is like the pure fault of the BDRs or the SDRs or whatever.
100.
I think the issue is post COVID, and by post COVID I mean post interest rates spiking and the money drying up and all the private equity funding getting real like growth and profit based. I think the dollars that were there that was being literally printed for new hires and for sales, I mean that era is over. We're looking at it now where CROs and CEOs for that matter are pushing growth numbers that are simply not representative of what the market is today, because that's what they grew
Yep.
2-3 years ago. And so they think it's still that market, and it's not. So when you have this artificial pressure put down on these sellers, a lot of whom are
Yeah.
relatively new to the
Yeah.
industry, they don't come in with big networks. They don't come in with a lot of technical knowledge either, because this is the first product they've worked with, or the second one, or whatever, and they haven't had that much time, just in the quarterback seat. I think it creates this culture of like, I need to do whatever I need to do to satisfy my boss. But what if the boss is
Yeah.
wrong? And what if the boss's boss is
Yeah.
wrong?
Bingo.
What if the shareholders are wrong? This whole system, what George and I are saying, the whole system is not working. The whole way that we look at business development and scaling is not working. Look at how like Ross Hellier talks about stuff, man. Like, he's right. We're, our perception of the industry and how we're trying to go to market with industries, it doesn't make sense anymore. And George and I are just trying to cast a light on people that recognize that and are trying to do things the right way. But at a whole of industry level, man, we are so
Yeah.
far off.
I mean, it's a recency bias thing, right? You got leaders coming in and they were very successful in a certain time period, let's say 2015 to 2019, and they think, well, that worked there. I'll just copy and paste this. I'll just recreate that.
Different.
That's a
Yeah.
natural human tendency, but I think it's also foolish to think that like the market is this static entity that does not change. But people's buying behavior changes, patterns change. I think people getting cold called on their personal cell phones with spoofed area codes is just like
Well, and it's
not a
changing
thing
again,
anymore, right? People just
right?
not
And
going
it's
to
it's going
tolerate it.
through another
Yeah.
evolution. So part of that, to your guys' point, so I was a VCISO for several years, and prior to COVID and right after COVID, and there was a fundamental difference in that. I did a lot of what you were just saying. Those relationships, building those relationships. A lot of my leads came out of building those relationships and the other third parties that I worked with as a VCISO, and saying, hey, this guy really knows what he's talking about. He's non-threatening. I believe in what he can do. I want you to talk to him, and just continuing that flywheel effect because of how you built those relationships. Now, after COVID, that served very well. I think the difference is where a lot of people get confused is that COVID hit, the economy changed, buying sentiment changed, the dollars available changed,
Hmm.
and then yeah,
Dollars
and
available.
then in
Bingo.
2022 there was a rebound effect. So all of that surplus of extra, support dollars that the government gave out, that rebounded back in, and people started buying things, buying ahead. And then in 2023, we leveled back out. In 2024, we're doing the same thing again. If you go back and look at all of the numbers, we see that across every industry. We see that surge and that drop again. But no one's paying attention to
Hmm.
that. And they're saying, oh, well, you know what? The things we used to do, we just need to get back to that. And let's go back and do the same things we were doing before. And they start the same practices and they do the same strategies, and those are not going to hit on anything substantial anymore because of all of those other attributes that have changed.
Well, and all that you got
It's
technology
okay,
changing.
Jason. We're just going to bring
Yes,
AI
exactly
into
my
it.
point. That was exactly where I was going with that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Technology there's so many moving parts, so many variables, and I don't envy the position of somebody young coming right out of school and trying to jump right into technology sales, because it's a very difficult
Yeah,
area to
man.
break into anyway. Technology is hard. Any kind of sales is hard, but in this industry, everything's changing, everything's moving. So I don't envy them. But that's a great segue into my next discussion point that I wanted to bring up with you guys, because we all realize time is precious. We're trying to get away with, uh, we work sometimes 50, 60 hours a week in our normal jobs. And every time I turn around, my inbox is full with requests. And the thing that really grates on my nerves is the one request that I know is BS, but I know they feel like they need to say it because they know time is precious.
Hmm.
And that's, can we just get 15 minutes of your time? And I'm like, guys, I can't even jump on a call with you, and we can't even go through introductions in 15 minutes. So that's the first,
Yeah.
you're already coming off on the wrong foot because I don't believe what you're telling me right out of the gate. There's no such thing as a 15-minute phone call in business ever.
Well, they're coming out of the gate asking for something from
Yeah.
you.
Well, I get
That's
that.
rough. That's a rough way to get started. I mean, my policy is you got to give 4 times before you ask for something.
Well, I wish everybody had that policy, but unfortunately they don't. And the problem is it's not.
I just don't know. Sorry. I tell people time and attention. They're the most valuable commodities in your life. They are non-renewable, and sorry, spoiler alert, none of us gets out
Yeah.
alive. So, do you want to spend your living, breathing days in back-to-back 15-minute so-called demos?
No.
No one wants to do that.
First off,
But so, like, I don't know how they're going to earn your respect to ask for that of you. That's asking a lot of you if they're not willing to give something first. And it shouldn't be a goddamn $25 Amazon gift card. Just saying.
well, that's the problem. Is how do we get to a point where my first instinct, the second I see an email, is to get frustrated because I don't mean to be like that, but it's what it's pushed me into because you sign up for something like a cybersecurity conference and you use your legit email, your legit communication information because you need to do that. I get that. Now you're on the list. Once you get on the list, you're getting hammered. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that it's quite appreciated to the level of how bad it is um, with the hundreds and thousands of vendors that are out there that are going to hammer you. Now, I get why they have to do that, but there's a wrong and a right way to do it. And this goes back to what you guys were talking about before.
But Kevin, can I ask you though? Do they have to do that? I mean, realistically, no. Like
So,
about that.
so,
Like,
so to
For sure. Let's question the
that's
assumptions.
a great point. I mean, do they know? Is that ingrained into what they've been trained to do? Yes, in a lot of ways. And I think that goes back to what you were
Mm-hmm.
saying, George K. There's we need to go back to the basics and talk about, are we doing this right?
Yeah, it goes
Because
back to a broken system, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So so I had a Olympic weightlifting coach who said you have to have brilliance in the basics. And what his point was is that people would come in and they were like want a PR, their snatch or their clean, but they couldn't do like 25 push-ups. Right. Or they couldn't do a handstand push-up, which is all to say like they didn't have the strength in the muscles that were going to stabilize when they tried to go do the big hard thing. Right. And so when we think about brilliance in the basics, like how is that sales machinery tuned? And to Jason and George A's point, do they have to do that? Well, if they built the machine to ingest emails, and ingestion of emails was the first step to the email block, they've built a thing that is incentivized in one direction, and so all of the activity will be directed in that direction. But if they were to build motions that were to prioritize human connections and high quality calls or high quality meetings, rather than just like sheer numbers, you would create a
There you
different
go.
incentive structure.
can I?
So you would start to like, if I were on the selling side, like, and I know I'm being measured on high quality meetings rather than sheer number of meetings, then I don't want to blow it that first time, Kevin. I don't want to ask you for the 15 minutes because if you say no and block my domain, like, well, that's done. That one's done. I got to move on to the next. It's a lot of hard work.
Well,
Anyway, I don't have all. It's not a panacea. I don't have all the answers, but I'm saying
Right.
let's question.
can I answer this though? Like, I'll tell you, in my time being a security buyer, of which that's now 4.5 years, I have never ever once engaged with a supplier or a service provider based on a cold approach email or phone call. Never
Bingo.
once. Never once have I ever bought a dime of things worth from anyone based on that approach. What I have done is I've gone to conference events and I've met people in person, even if the product is new, because I know what my problem statements are, what I'm
Exactly.
looking for, and what's on my roadmap
Yeah.
this quarter
Yeah.
this year. And I've been demoed a new product that I didn't know about And the person doing a demo was really cool. The team around me and the booth, they were really cool. And the demo itself was really cool. So based on that, again, 5 to 15 minute interaction, then they entered into the actual pipeline and POC, and a couple of purchases happened. But what happened was my need, my search for the software or for the service drove the initial interaction. I didn't have it come to me.
Right.
So I'm saying that like sales organizations need to realize that in this day and age, with dollars as scrutinized as they are, with ROI as much a question as it's always been, you have to get away from the email approach type machine that you've built and go more towards, all right, how do we break down our marketing into a regional approach where we show up in person to events and to meetups, where we invest our sponsorship dollars not on F1 cars or crazy mascots, but on investing in a good initial, like, business development team that can go out, represent our company, represent our product, and meet buyers on site who will then, engage in that conversation. And when you've met someone in person, even if I only met you in person one time, but we had a good interaction, that's going to create good phone and email interactions the rest of the way, because that primacy effect, right? So I think, again, the emails don't have to happen anymore. The cold calls don't have to happen anymore. They should be training their people and investing their dollars in where can we physically interact with the buyers, because that connection, that chemistry, that's going to get the sale.
Yeah, totally agree.
And if you listen to the most recent episode with Chaz Larios, she's talking about she understands the buying behavior has changed as a CMO, and that her job is to create the conditions under which people who are trying to do their own research under very strict time constraints, i.e. security practitioners, have what they need, right? Because the common understanding in B2B marketing is that by the time they hit your site, they've already done 70% of the research. I mean, that's a anecdotal number, but it's to capture a larger phenomenon, which means what George A was saying. He has problem statements. He has priorities. He has a roadmap. He knows what he needs, and that team is going to go look for it. So when they go look for it, are you standing there hat in hand, like a clown, like just fill out these forms to get all of our white papers, or are you sort of showing up as somebody who's a facilitator and like, okay, you may not be ready to buy today because this is a goddamn website and you're not going to purchase hundreds of thousands of dollars of software through us yet, but here is all the information available that you need in plain English, and this is how it maps to probably what you're trying to solve, and this is what we do. We do not do it all. We don't do this, but we do this very well. Does that fit? I don't know. It's like it requires a completely different set of thinking. But I think if you back up and you were like, how do I buy things? It is not that much different. And I feel like it sounds really simplistic to say like golden rule marketing, but I feel like I always felt creepy doing outreach, and I was very careful with the DMs because I didn't want to
Right.
get those messages.
Right. Yeah, and you got to be transparent about what you are and what you're not. That's a great point too. Is a lot of the salespeople that are come off as overly aggressive will make you feel as if they've got the answer to every problem you possibly could have in the world of cybersecurity, and we all know that's not true.
We have
Yeah,
solved
exactly.
cyber.
Exactly. Yeah, cybersecurity is solved. What's next, right? Well, I want to talk LinkedIn because we're talking about outreach, and I got to be the first to admit to you guys, I know you guys are pretty heavy in the LinkedIn scene, and I've got a LinkedIn too. My problem is I don't have enough time in the day to go out and spend any real time there, um, either networking or communicating. I do as much as I can, but it's hard. And every time I get in there, I see that I've got a shit ton of messages from people that you obviously don't know. They're mostly on the sales side. And I don't know if I should be offering this public apology now, but I'm never, rarely ever am I going to respond to one of those messages. I have a hard enough time getting through my emails every day. And I get just as many.
Yeah. Select all,
Yeah,
mark
I
as
mean,
read.
seriously, I almost need to. And instead, I don't even look at them. I don't ever go in my inbox on LinkedIn unless I'm trying to reach out to someone. That's the only reason I ever go in there. I hate it, but that's a reality.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point, right? That's the empathy. If you approached every outreach thinking like, man, this is the straw that broke the camel's back. This is the one DM that puts this person over the edge. Like how careful would you be with that? I don't know. That's an interesting thought experiment. But I don't, to answer your question, I don't answer all of them if they're sort of blatant garbage. Like, I don't know, why do people want to offer me a franchise? Like, get the fuck out with that. Move to other, which is a great feature. Thank you, LinkedIn. But for some, I will try to say something. Usually I will screenshot it and send it to George and we'll have a good laugh. Like at one point we were both listed as like co-founders of the podcast, and we're like, well, that was a mistake because the profile scrapers came at us hard with like
Oh,
B2B
yeah, yeah,
sales software and lead gen. And I was like, got tired of saying like, yo, it's a podcast. I don't
yep,
need lead gen.
yep. Same
Please
problem.
stop being an asshat. So we changed co-owners. We learned that lesson hard. But sometimes I'll get something that's like really weird. Like I was just telling George the other day, like I announced I was like on an advisory board for a nonprofit, and like I would get like, congrats on the new role. If you ever need
Yeah,
to, get sales and marketing enablement, I was like, we had a laugh, and I would reply, I'm like, it's an advisory board for a nonprofit, period. Good luck, period. Move to other. Like I get some satisfaction out of that, but like you tried, but like no, like this was clearly bad.
Well,
I think I see that as like it's a responsibility from the show to just be like, that's wrong, stop it.
I think here's the difference. I can tell when a message has been cut and pasted with just like, here's
Mm-hmm.
an intro paragraph based on looking at your profile for 2 seconds, and then cut and paste the rest of the message, versus like an organically written
right.
message. Like you kind of tell the difference. What I end up getting a lot of, other than the shitty, annoying sales things, is a lot of people looking for jobs.
Oh,
A lot of people just like send me
Fair
their
point.
resumes, like completely unsolicited. Like they know people I know, but I don't know how they know them or how well they know them or whatever it is, or they went to an event that maybe my name was affiliated to or something. Like I may not have met them in person. Most of the time I haven't. And they somehow like they've seen interviews or shows or stuff I've done, and they'll talk about it in like great detail, and then talk about how like they want to work for me, or can you help me find a
Yep.
job. I'm not gonna lie to you, man. Like I want to help those people out.
Yeah.
Like kindness in my heart, I really and truly feel for them. But I also am just like I get that some people might use the platform in this manner, and maybe it works for some people. I feel kind of somewhere between sad and grossed out for them, because I'm kind of just like, dude, like how desperate are you right now? Like this is not how you build an employer relationship. Like I don't know you. Like come to the event,
Mm.
sure, but like actually like talk to me. Talk to me, get to know me, like, get me to like you just by being a decent person or a cool person. If you're a cool person, we met at an event and I like you, great. I will find a way to work together with you. But if we haven't built that, like don't just throw me your resume and then expect I'm going to help you out.
Right.
And I feel bad for that. And then some of those folks, if you don't respond to them, because I truly don't have the time of day to respond to things. Like you guys want to talk about being LinkedIn and brand stuff. Most of the time, people tag me in things. I barely post stuff on my own
Yeah.
anymore. People just my name is always out there because I'm constantly getting tagged
Yeah.
in stuff. So I just, as a practitioner and as a busy practitioner at that, and Kevin, you tell me if you're feeling the same thing. I don't have the time to engage in this stuff. You do enough cool things. People will post about you anyway, but people still look at you. They look at your role and they see an opportunity for themselves. I am not your opportunity. Let me tell you that right now to anyone listening to your show. I am not your
Yep.
opportunity. You have to
Yeah.
make that connection
I agree.
organically.
I mean, and that's,
Yeah.
I'm in the same boat. I get those kinds of offers all the time. And I'm like, most of the time, I don't even see them until months after they've been sent to me because I'm digging through my inbox looking for something else or looking for somebody that I know I've communicated with in the past. I've actually got a real reason to go reach out to. And I guess if that makes me a dick, I'm a dick. I'm a LinkedIn dick.
It
I'm a
makes you a
LinkedIn
human.
dick.
That makes you a human working with finite energy and time and attention. So I'll say, like, if I see that there is a somewhat authentic attempt to learn, right? George and I talk about the value of curiosity. So I got this one the other day that was referenced a series of articles I wrote about my layoff experience, and it talked about networking. And I would say, I don't know that the cat really took away the lesson that I had tried to impart about networking. Like, the point about networking is it's like a business term for connecting and making friends. That's what it is. Like, it's not like this esoteric dark art. But so I just said, like, and there's no way. It was like the answer in my head was really long and I wasn't going to get to it. But I made a note. I don't know. I have like 1,000 note taking apps, and I eventually got back to it. It was probably way later than that person wanted, like weeks later. But I did attempt to say, like, look, I think if you go in asking people about their job and the companies they work for, it feels like you're asking for something. And you need to give before you ask, because that's just how you build trust. And so, like, look to connect on interests, similar ideas, comment on stuff. I just try to, like, but I did make a note to go back, because I feel like if they're going to, like, genuinely try to learn something, then I should. But if it's coming at me straight of, like, hey, you've done a great job in marketing, can you get me a job? I'm like, no, dude, that's not how you can't do that. It's like super rude. So let's learn our lesson and move on.
Well, guys, that first segment was a lot of interesting conversations there and some good stuff. I think let's go to a break and then come back and jump into our second segment.
Great customer to vendor relationships come down to many things, but consider word of mouth. According to Nielsen, 92% of customers trust recommendations from friends and family over other forms of advertising. Strong networking between customers and vendors can lead to positive word-of-mouth marketing, driving new customer acquisition. Good communication and honesty. Acquiring a new customer can cost a whopping 5 times more than retaining an existing customer. Treat your customers well, retain them year to year, and watch your profits continue to increase for many, many years to come.
We are sitting here talking with the Georges from Knuckles and Brass Tacks.
And bare knuckles.
Oh, I did say brass. I keep saying the brass. Bare Knuckles and Brass Tacks. And here's the thing, guys. Great conversation, but let's jump a little bit more into who you guys are. And, I'd like to dive a little bit into that, starting with you, George A. You're a CISO. Tell us a little bit about your role and what a typical day looks like for you.
Okay. So a normal day when there's like no incidents, excuse me. Usually I get up in the morning after I go from a 5K. I'm usually back sitting on my computer by 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning. I like to take the first hour to follow up on emails that are specific, like I need to draft like a thoughtful response to. So I go through those in the first hour. 9 o'clock, I get ready for my team stand-up. So I have a stand-up with my team every morning at 9:30. Everyone kind of goes over what they're going through the day or whatever. We get that done usually in about 10, 15 minutes. If it goes a little bit more, just we have stuff to talk about. And then usually the rest of the day are a series of like meetings, where I have like a senior leadership meeting with the engineering group, or I have a corporate senior leadership meeting. I sit on the senior executive team for the company. And then there's just various projects, various issues. What I've done, and so I come from a military background. I really believe in a hierarchical
That's a hard
chain
one,
of
isn't
command.
it?
I speak like 4 different languages, and sometimes English fails me. So what I've done, and we talk about this. We actually proposed a couple papers about this. I believe in building up second line managers or third line managers if your organization is big enough, and I empower them to the max, right? So my job as a senior executive is to set strategic direction and kind of mentorship and guidance. I think of myself as the head coach of a high performance team. It's not my job to be out there on the field or on the ice doing the thing, but I'm the one who has to set the plays. I'm the one that has to trigger the action. I'm the one that has to take ultimate accountability for the performance of everyone.
Right.
So what I do is like I give my TLs, the team leads, kind of like what their guidance is and what they need to do, and I give it to them at the strategic level. So I say, hey, I want us to get a next gen SIEM, right? So with the guys, so from my security operations manager, my architecture lead, they'll come together and I might say, hey, look at this solution or that solution. But then I'll say, cool, find me like 10 or 15 different providers out there that you guys like. We will go through and demo all of them. Then we'll narrow it down to a process of 2 to 3 that we'll do a comparative POC with. And the winner of that, based on a common set of requirements and criteria, both technical and business case, that's who we will determine as the quote unquote winner. So I can take that information, then go to my CFO and my CIO and say, hey, this is what we did. We did the due diligence. I'll make the pitch for it. And usually at that point, like it's 90%, they're already going to approve the thing because I kick up information to my bosses, like this is what we're doing right now. But that due diligence process, I make sure everyone is bought into what we're doing because I allow contributions from everyone from day one. Like my job is just we need to go this way. How we go this way, that's what the team leads and the actual team members need to help to decide. And I'm not necessarily going to direct them on that. I need them to advise me what they're capable of doing in terms of their time, in terms of their capacity, where their strengths are, areas where they feel they're not the strongest. So I need to find someone to augment that skill gap. And based on those decisions, and then obviously based on the budgetary climate of the company, then I can determine what we can and can't do. And like anyone else in tech, I've had to deal with multiple rounds of layoffs the last couple of years. My team in size has decreased by almost
Wow.
50%. Like we were down from like 15 people. We're
Yeah.
down to less than that now. And I have to figure out how to still maintain the basic obligations of a corporate security shop while still working up our developmental roadmap and the things we want to do. So it's a lot of prioritization, reprioritization conversations. And then, that's just the basic core like CISO job at my employer. Then as a security leader, I have a whole bunch of other things I have to do. There's always dinner events to go to, there's social events to go to, there are networking events to go to. I have relationships and things that I do, like CyberX is a really cool kind of like security leadership association. We put on a lot of really good events in Canada. I sit on the board for them. I do a lot of things where I work with a lot of VCs. So I help VCs out with some of their portfolio companies. I come out to their events. I'll sometimes do like some quote unquote customer champion type work for folks who are working at VCs who are personal friends of mine. I'll do it as a favor. And then, of course, I put a lot of time in with my suppliers. So as much as people talk about suppliers or your software companies taking you out to dinner doing the events, I will sometimes go out of my way if I'm, for example, in Toronto or I'm in Montreal or I'm wherever, and I know that I have a sales rep or whatever in that city, maybe, I haven't talked to them in a few weeks or a month or two, and, there's no reason to talk. There's no renewal or anything. I'm happy with the service. I will go out of my way if I have time to be like, hey, dude, I got time to have a drink tonight, or I have time to catch a meal. Do you want to get together and hang out?
Cultivating that
And so
relationship.
I
That's
will
huge.
initiate that conversation.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because I
Yeah.
need to trust them. They need to trust me. And the benefit of that, I could tell you, it's this is like one of the greatest renewal stories ever.
It's amazing.
Huh? Pardon me? Oh no, I got to tell them.
It's amazing.
So last year, American Thanksgiving, I'm with coincidentally, like I'm just wearing the shirt because I was just wearing the shirt today. I was with RF, and we're watching the game, like the American football game, and we might have had some pops, a lot of pops. So I mean, we're having a really good time, great time. And my sales guy who's running the event, him and I are like actually friends, like outside of work too. We became friends through the interaction, like in our long term sales like business relationship. So I'm at the event, we're having fun. I'm with with one of my colleagues as well, and so he has to go like actually talk to other people too. He's like, oh man, hold on, I gotta go talk to other people. It's like whatever, man, we're having a good time. end of the night, like him and I are like closing down the bar a little bit, right? Like people are starting to leave. We're still having fun. And then like I remembered, I was like, oh shit, like I got to get the terms on the renewal because my CIO wanted those. And so I was telling, I was like, well, we have to actually figure this thing out. And so in our state, we'll say, I looked at him, I was like, hey, all right, I'm going to renew with you. That's not the question. I need you to not raise your price. He's like, okay, I'm not going to raise the price. So I'm like, your year over year inflation. I asked him, like, what do you need that number to be? He's like, I don't know, man. I can make it 0 if you need to, but that's not gonna look good with my boss. I was like, no. Don't worry about it. What's the number gonna be? All right. Well, if I don't change it, it's like 7%. I was like, are you good? Can you do 3? Are you okay with 3? Will your boss be happy with that? And he's like, oh shit, man, my boss will be really good with 3. It's okay. We don't have to do 7. I just can't do 0. I was like, great. So we're 3. He's like, yeah. All right, let's do a shot. And that was the deal.
Nice.
That was the
Dude,
deal.
this is what I'm saying.
Less than 5
Yeah.
minutes and like 2 shots in,
Yeah.
that was the deal. And that was like one of the most fun interactions I had. We did business, we did work, and we had a good time. Check mark, like that. That's why like I love the job. I have a bunch of relationships like that. So yes, there's some stressful parts of the job. Like for example, I was in Ireland on a Cyber Ireland trip last year. An incident hit with work, and dude, I was on a bus to Dublin, all right, from like Cork, and no, it was from Galway to Cork. It was all the way across the country. Incident hit. I'm on the phone on the bus, right? We get to the restaurant, super nice restaurant. You know, Enterprise Ireland's taking us out. It's a government shop. It's a great 5-star place. Incident call still going. Restaurant's loud. The connection's kind of iffy. So I have to go downstairs to the washroom on the floor where the only place is quiet enough for me to actually listen to people on the call. I'm handling the incident on the floor of a washroom in Dublin, right? But I can't go because I'm the CISO. So I ended up, my whole meal was cold. I missed the meal. We go
Oh,
back to the
man.
hotel. I literally passed out in a Google Meet, like in bed, still listening to the call because the time zone difference, right? So like, there are times where like this job is great, it's super easy, it's fun, but then there's a lot of times where like, you know, shit hits the fan and you got to be the guy and you can't
Yeah.
go anywhere. So in a nutshell, that's kind of my day.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
Well, I mean, just for the benefit of your listeners, is anyone is on the vendor side, Jesus Christ, please rewind.
Yeah,
And
please.
take notes. Because, I mean, this is what I'm saying. I come from an anthropology background. I was trained as a cultural anthropologist. And this, like, my entire career has been made of observing and listening. And, like, if you don't understand what George is going through, and then you pretend all CISOs are, like, the same, there's several lessons in there. I won't hit them all. But the first is the CISO does not have hands-on keys. So I don't know why all of the outreach is just to the CISO, right? Like, he's not been an operator for a number of years. He's trusting the team lead. So are you
That's so
doing what
true.
you need to do to reach the people who will actually use the tool and influence his decision? And then, you know, on the sales side, I always hear this in process and calls. It's like, what can we do to not do a bake-off, which is a comparative POC? And you hear him. He's like, no, man, he's got pressure from CIO and CFO. They have to do diligence. That's part of the process. Give that part up. It's just, if your tool is good enough, that's just what it is. Anyway, there's so much in there that's what I would grab people by the lapels and shake them. I was like, you got to listen to this, because if you do not understand this life, then what you're sort of like blasting out, you know, doesn't make a lot of sense. On my side, it's obviously very different. I have been on the vendor side. That's usually sort of marketing meetings, campaigns, plans. I will drop one thing that's probably very heretical to marketing and vendors, which is, if you are sitting around in a marketing meeting because you need a brainstorming session, that is probably a sign that you are not adequately paying attention to the market you are trying to address. Why do I say that? Because if you are sitting around batting ideas back and forth, pulling things out of the blue, or making certain assumptions like, what if we did this, or CISOs really like that, then it means you're not paying attention, because the answers to your campaigns, the ideas, are there. That's the science. You got to be plugged in and like pull that out. And then the creativity, the art is like what you do with that. But recently I've made a change. I'm now the head of community at the CISO Society. So my day is very different. My day is connecting with a lot more security leaders. We serve CISOs in title or responsibility, right? So often like mid-market shops, you're like director of security and IT, but you're like effectively the CISO, right? And so we're connecting with those people. We're bringing them into the society, sort of like in the society day to day, running the events. We have a lot of those events. It's all about like continuously cultivating the community so that it provides value for the members, which is now upwards of just over 900. And so that's a lot. It's like it can get really shaky and communities can go really stale very quickly. So you have to constantly be providing that value and interacting with those people and understanding like, oh, hey, somebody put this post up for like they need a security engineer. Hey, you over there, didn't you just say like unfortunately you had to let some go? Like let's like make those connections and connect those dots. And just provide like a safe place for CISOs to air those concerns. I think people assume that CISOs like know everything, but like if they don't have to reinvent the wheel, they like everyone else will go to people and friends and colleagues and be like, yo, I got to do this thing. Anyone done this before? You got a template I can use? Can I like not have to go do this from scratch? That would be super cool. Right. And so like that's a large part of my day. And other hats that I wear, co-founder and executive director of Mind Over Cyber, which is a nonprofit dedicated to providing portable mindfulness meditation techniques to defenders. So we're running lots of stuff there. We're doing a program at Black Hat. So sometimes part of my week in the early mornings or late evenings is dedicated to touching base with my other co-founders and the operations team and trying to scale that organization. And then we got the podcast, which obviously takes up a good part of my life in terms of light touches throughout the week, coordinating with guests, talking to this guy. Hey, we should talk about XYZ. And then ultimately recording. We usually record Thursday nights, doing editing and trying to turn it around. So,
we've also,
and then
I was going to say, we also record trains, planes, hotels. Like we record everywhere. I did an episode with George where I was at a team meeting with our consultant firm in Serbia, in Belgrade, and George is back in America.
But I was in an Airbnb closet because it was super echoey.
That's right.
And I had like blankets and pillows everywhere to cut out the noise, and it was like fucking hotboxing in there basically because it was like trapped in the Harry Potter closet, and I was on camera and just like sweat pouring down. But no, like so obviously the podcast is such a large part of our life that we like plan travel around it or plan how to take.
So when you guys do your podcast, is there like a cadence to how often you feel you need to be recording, or is it just pretty organic whenever you get the chance?
No, we record every week, release every week. We can't really maintain like an advanced runway just because their schedules are insane and it's hard enough to coordinate it. I check in with guests, and we are very fortunate that if a guest is like suddenly sick or things happen, like a kid gets sick or you've had an accident on the highway, whatever, that we have had a couple of pinch hitters come in, like, but we have those people on our phones. We can be like, can you jump on in half an hour? And like, there's no plan. And a lot of people are good sports about it. And it's amazing.
I also, and you guys talked about this earlier a bit for podcast growth. I really believe the key to it, with the algorithms, especially consistent release schedule of episodes and content. If you have that consistent release schedule, you will organically grow. That's just how the algorithm works. I don't know any deeper than that. I just know that that's how a lot of big podcasts grow, and that's how we've almost grown to 10,000 downloads talking about bullshit. Like, really.
Yeah. Well, one of the interesting things that I've noticed recently is like the number of downloads has gone up on like episodes like 2 seasons ago, which tells me that somebody is discovering something and then like scrolling back through. I think on a weekly cadence, there's a temptation to think like, like there's a certain window, it goes out, it spikes, and then like it's forever and lost in time. But that does not seem to be the case, at least in the metrics that we're seeing. So,
well, gosh, I mean, there goes evidence that you guys are just as busy as anybody else and still able to pull this stuff off. It's impressive that you guys are finding the time to do it. I know Jason and I struggle with it too. It's very hard, and we don't have that consistent cadence as to our releases. We're still trying to get that figured out. But what are we in, Jason? Our third year now.
Third year, yeah.
So a lot of things that we did in year one, we're no longer doing, and we're kind of organically changing as we go. But yeah, just finding a way to do it the way that we record and throw the additional visual content on it makes it very difficult to release every week for us. It's
Yeah,
extremely
man.
hard,
Yeah.
but we're doing the best we can. We're doing the best we can for sure. Guys, I'd like to shift gears a little bit. I want to talk about Hacker Summer Camp. I put a little timer out and tweeted this earlier that we were just now over 40 days to Hacker Summer Camp. It's
Oh, damn.
close, dude. It's coming up very close. And
Yeah.
I remember, yeah, I know we haven't actually been talking very long, but I do remember seeing a lot of your guys' posts last year during this time as we were approaching Hacker Summer Camp. And then when we got there, we didn't know until we got there that you guys were actually doing a live event out there, and that's really cool to know that there was like this network of cyber podcasters that were working together to put content out there live. That sounds like a lot of exciting fun too. But what I really wanted to ask is, as we approach this, what is the approach, the actual event, and then the landing when you get back home? What does that look
Mhm.
like for you guys? Because we have a certain rhythmic cadence to what we do, or we try to do when we're leading into this, and of course when we get back, if we don't kill ourselves there. But what does that look like for you guys?
Great question. Um, Last year was different. I went there as a free agent. This year I'm going with the CISO Society and Mind Over Cyber. So there are work obligations. But I think George and I are of a similar mind that these big tentpole conferences, like a lot of the action
Oh
happens
yeah,
off the
for sure.
floor. And the reason I go, you said it, it's summer camp, it's family reunion, it's whatever. It's a chance to see people I text or interact with on LinkedIn. We're collegial, but I only see them like these 2 times a year, and that's like a time to solidify those
Right.
relationships. Um, so that's what we're. Well, I mean,
Like,
that's definitely
yeah,
why I'm going out there.
like for me, like I go as a practitioner, right? So my primary responsibility is what the business need me to do because they're
Yeah,
paying for me to
sure.
be there. Um, but the way that I kind of look at it, and it's kind of what I said to a lot of the CISO group chats that I'm in, and a lot of folks agreed with the way the conference is changing. Black Hat is now more about talking to my current suppliers and just touching base with them and maybe doing some senior executive meetings and sitting down and in between the lines, like talking to a lot of folks who I do business with or interact with and meet them in person, like when I can. But the reality is, if I'm seeking innovation, innovation's at DEF CON. And you saw that last year because DARPA was all over
Mm.
DEF CON, the White House is all over DEF CON, DOD is all over DEF CON. So they're understanding that the real hackers and the innovators, they're at DEF CON. So that's where I want to see where the cutting edge is. I'll go there. And of course, I have a good fun and like all the cool weirdos are there and it's
Yeah.
great. But Black Hat now is becoming what RSA used to be, and it's very very cliche, and really the people going to Black Hat, that's where the value is. But I mean, I look, you walk through the floor. Last year was like everyone and everything was AI and ML enhanced, but then when you talk to them about it, it's all black box. It's all like, well, I can't talk about it here, but if you
Keyword
connect with
matching,
us, yeah, like
regex.
one of our engineers will talk. I'm like, guys, you can't tell me the basic architecture of how your system works. I don't care for this pitch, So when I want to find real like AI enhanced solutions, I go to DEF CON because the founders are there and they'll actually explain to you how they built the thing, right? They don't look at it like some big trade secret. They want you to know because they want to connect with other people and other founders who are also doing similar things, and they want to see where they can work together. So that kind of community mindset is a lot more appealing if you're looking at things from an innovation standpoint. But just the traditional business relationship type events, that's what happens at Black Hat. On the side of all that, when I'm not doing like work stuff, I'm hanging out with George. We're being like friends with our friends. We're seeing people that we interact with and deal with in the greater cyber podcast community, which, I think George is a much better people person than I am. Like he's like
I just
super on it.
drag him to shit.
Yeah, he's like
I'm like,
super
you gotta come with
popular
me. We
and
go do this thing.
cool. I hate most people. I'm usually fucking tired. I want to go hit things. But George makes me go be a nice guy and like we got to go out and do the thing. So I appreciate him for that. But again, that's just like we are connected to a community. We're part of a community. And I think that feels really cool because before we started doing this podcast, I didn't know any of these people. I didn't know this thing was a thing. And now we're like, oh, wow, look at this entire thing that we didn't know happened and all these relationships and these networks that we're now connected to just because we get together once a week and we talk about silliness.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah. And I'll say like, I want to also give a shout out. Like we'll be doing some stuff with SquadCon, which is the conference started by Black Girls Hack, which runs between Black Hat and DEF CON in that overlap on the last day of Black Hat.
Would that be Thursday?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. But they had a really great show last year, and their party
It's lit.
off the chain. Yeah, it's super awesome, and it's a great group of people, and a lot of cats come to learn, and it's students and it's professors and it's Jen Easterly and it's a whole bunch of people were there. It's they'll be doing their second year, so
Cool.
we'll be looking forward to
Yeah.
that too.
They spun out of doing their like a village, right? Out of DEF CON?
Yeah, so the Girls Hack Village was standing room only 2 years ago, and then for reasons heretofore unknown, they were not invited back. And so instead of kvetching about it, they said, fuck that, we'll make our own. And they did, and it's pretty amazing. And it's just really inclusive. It's just a great vibe.
Yeah,
very cool.
It's really cool.
So guys, let's take this a slight different direction, and I'm gonna call it audible here, Kevin. We're gonna jump into something interesting, but I want to get to the root of some things. I'd like to get your guys' perspective of your top 3 cyber tips, and really kind of give some nuggets back to the audience from your perspective. So, George K., let's start with you.
I mean, when we're talking cyber, like personal cyber hygiene.
Yeah. Let's do personal. Let's do personal cyber hygiene.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, personal. For the love of God, password managers and 2FA, MFA, please. It was hard to get some of my family members onto password managers. But once they got on, it was a great relief to just be able to put like insane unique passwords on everything, so that something got popped, they didn't just like credential stuff their way to your bank account. So I'll count that as sort of like 1 and 2, because definitely, and now like at least on the Apple side, there's like a lot of passkey options too, which just is like really cool for a lot of critical infrastructure, like your email, your Google Drive, stuff like that. And then the more novel one, because I have elderly parents, is voice phrases to prevent shallow fake, deep fake stuff. That sounds sci-fi. I think people still think it's sci-fi, but that shit is happening to like everyday civilians because the off-the-shelf models are so readily accessible. Like what was advanced in 2019 is like easy, right? And if you don't think it can happen to you, voice is the number one way they go after the elderly, right? They pretend to be from the bank. They pretend that they create all this stuff that we as people in cyberland know about, but other people do not. And so we've just created unique passphrases, especially when it comes to financials.
We've got your granddaughter, and we're holding her in the back seat of our car, and we need you to wire us the money, or we're going to kill her.
Yeah, and like that. So, and like Jason, to your point, again, brilliance in the basics. Like when this stuff was first coming out, people were like, "Oh, how are we going to have technology that detects this technology?" Now it's like, yo, in the Cold War, they literally use
Yeah.
these phrases on encrypted lines because that was the way to
Extremely, it's
verify. So like you can also go
Yes,
backwards
absolutely.
to go forward.
sometimes, yeah, you have to step backwards because forwards isn't there yet. So those are key elements to protecting
Yeah.
yourself there.
All right, George A., how about you?
So what do you want me to say
Personal
here?
cyber hygiene. What are your top 3 tips?
Top 3 tips. Yeah, obviously, like, rotate passwords. Don't make them easy. Don't make them like words. The other one would be probably actually put in your MFA.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as much as people talk about,
Turn
oh,
it in.
MFA is dead, man in the middle attack. Well, for most common people, if you have MFA in
Yes.
place,
Yeah.
you're fine.
Yeah.
Like, you're okay. It's okay. You are not a target. No one cares about the cat memes or adult websites you visit. No one cares. And probably the third biggest one, really be mindful of what you put out there. Like, a lot of
Yeah.
people, they're just giving the ammo for social engineering all over the place. I used to laugh, for example, like when Facebook was a thing, like, or I was on it. I haven't been on it in over a year. You'd see those those surveys or whatever. It was just like 30 questions about you or whatever. And like my sister used
Yeah.
to love filling those things out, and like I would tell her, like, Marlene, it's a bad idea, dude. You are literally giving away all your password questions.
Yeah.
Like these,
Or your
Yeah.
psychology,
Yeah.
right?
your
Like
psychology,
here
right?
is
And so,
here are
Yeah.
the things I care
Right.
about.
like, the things that you offer up, like, I hate to say it, and it's available. Like, there's services available out there. Go through an open source scrubber. Find out what your internet footprint actually is, or even without doing that, Google your own name and see if
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
actually comfortable with the
Right.
things that pop up.
Yeah, don't make the
Yeah,
OSINT easier,
absolutely.
guys.
Kevin and I, we were doing a presentation a couple of months ago and around AI, and we were talking about cyber threats associated with it. And one of the statements we made was, I'm like, here's the thing, man. You guys are all getting all scared and worried about what cyber threats are associated with AI. But here's the reality. All of your information has already been leaked because we had poor hygiene to begin with way back in the day when the internet came online. So let's not recreate how bad that was by adding more of your data into this new era. Pay attention to what you're doing. Know that, if you're putting your picture out on a Facebook app to like change your appearance and see how you might look if you look like somebody else, that picture might be used as a deep fake later, right? Know that these things are possible.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a very good, very, very, very good point.
Well, I tell people a lot what George A just said about Googling yourself, because a lot of people haven't looked themselves up by doing that to see what's
Yeah.
out there. I guarantee you, to the listeners that are out there that have never done that, if you'll just take the time, spend 15 minutes and look at what's out there publicly about you right now today, it's gonna blow your mind that there's that much crap out there that people can use to try to use against you or socially engineer you. It's insane. Encourage referrals. According to a Texas Tech University study, 83% of satisfied customers are willing to refer products and services. Only 29% actually do. Sales efficiency. Salespeople who rely on strong networking relationships are 50% more likely to meet or exceed their sales quotas. This drives the importance of relationship building for sales success. Welcome back from the break. This is the last segment of our episode with George and George from Knuckles and Brass Tacks. And guys, this is a little bit different of a type of segment. And the way we like to end is on a fun note. So what we're going to do is hit you guys up with the typical would you choose this or would you choose that, A or B type question, okay? And these questions can go pretty wild. So, but it's usually pretty fun and pretty interesting at some of the answers we hear. So here we go. And I'm going to start with you, George A. We're just going to go alphabetically here. Question number 1: would you rather live in a world without the internet or without air conditioning?
Well, without the internet, hands down, without the internet. I like my dream is to retire to, like, either owning a gym, owning a bar, or preferably owning a beach bar on like St. Cat's or St. Kitts,
Hell
like
yeah.
A
just
beach
serving
bar with a
people
gym.
all day.
Dude,
I want nothing to do. When I'm done, I have a Freedom 50 plan. When I turn 50, I want to be out of cyber.
nice.
I don't want
There you
nothing to do with the
go.
Nice.
internet.
Well, see, if I'd have done that, if I met your plan, it would have been 5 years ago. So I guess I've failed so far. I need to get my plan in place. I'm going to say 65. I'm going to be on a beach renting jet skis in Mexico.
All
That's my
right.
goal. All right. Question number two,
Nice.
George K. This one's for you. Would you rather have a third eye or a third arm?
Ugh, third
Mm,
arm. Third arm. I got pretty good eyesight. These are just
yeah.
blue light glasses. But I have two kids, and sometimes you run man to man defense, and you
Oh,
wish you had that
absolutely.
third arm, but you
Absolutely.
still can't do it.
Would you go baby arm or full size arm?
Full size arm.
I'd go baby arm and put it way up high on my shoulder so I could just throw peace signs at people as I'm driving
No,
down the
no,
road.
just
All right, I got one. All right, George A. Never feel pain or never feel fear.
I'd say never feel
Mm,
pain because I think there's a value in fear. Fear is important. Fear
mm-hmm.
makes you care. Fear makes you aware. I think be it going to present in front of your angry CEO or board, or you're about to go into a fight. Um, I'm not gonna lie to you. I go through the same fear and anxiety cycle, but knowing how to manage that makes you a strong
Yeah.
person. I could accept fear. I would love to not wake up in the morning and not be able to stand up straight because my
Yeah,
back is
yeah,
stiff.
yeah,
You know
Yeah.
what I
absolutely.
mean?
I got you.
hmm.
All right, George K. Eat a live worm or dead cockroach.
Oh, live worm,
Yeah,
hands down,
It's
hands
a
down.
lot of good protein.
It's
yeah,
high
Yeah.
yeah.
protein. High protein. Yeah, I don't know where the dead cockroach has been or why it is dead. Is it dead because it was
All
poisoned? I'm
right.
not
Yeah. Yeah.
interested in that.
Hey, man, that's good logic. I like that
Yeah,
logic.
that's pretty good.
All right, George A. Would you rather have a personal theme song that plays whenever you enter a room or have a personal cheering section?
Personal theme song, hands down, dude. I
Done.
went to a
Yes.
conference like 3 years ago, and I had theme music when I walked out on stage, and it was like the coolest thing I ever
It
been
is pretty
through
cool.
in my professional life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. I presented at SquadCon. Shout out to SquadCon again. And the question for speakers was like literally give us
Your
your
walkout song.
walkout.
That's so
It was
cool.
like
We,
I had so much fun picking it, but yeah, the experience
what
of
would you
walking
walk
out
out
was
to?
amazing.
Do you remember?
I walked out to no a Most Def song. It was just
Oh, okay. Right
off the
on.
chain,
Right
just
on.
amazing. It just feels
Very
super high.
cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. George K. Would you rather live in a world where everyone looks the same or where everyone sounds the same?
Mm.
Oh.
Sucks either way, right?
Yeah, humans are highly visual creatures. I mean, that's like 90% of the information going into our brain. So I would rather people sound the same. I would It'd be really weird to just be in like this homogenous, like being John Malkovich movie
Robots.
where
Yeah.
like everyone looks exactly the same. That would
Everyone would
be
look the same,
really
but they have
weird. It
different
would be very
personalities. You
disconcerting.
never know who you were talking to until you actually talk to them. That'd be terrible.
Yeah, that's I mean, yeah, that would be really
And there would be no
dangerous.
more dating the hotter person, right? It'd be like, yeah, well, we're all the same.
Right.
I'd be out of business, bro. Be out of business.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we can't
But
run you out of business.
All right, George A. Be allergic to sunlight or allergic to water.
Hmm, that's a hard
but
one.
uh, but uh, you, I would prefer sunlight over water, but I think if I go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I can't survive without water. I could, in theory, survive without
Yeah,
sunlight.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you can just take your vitamin D pills and
Yeah,
you'd be all right.
yeah. All right, George
Yeah.
K. Be
Oh,
able to
yeah.
shrink the size to the size of an ant or grow to the size of a skyscraper.
Oh, I'm going to try and not turn my physics brain on, but I definitely want to be the size of skyscraper. Yeah,
Right
that was
on.
cool. But I think like gravity would be a big part.
You just don't want to fall. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, George A. Would you rather be stuck in a broken elevator or on a broken ski lift?
No.
Oh, ski lift. To be honest with you, I'd rather be outside.
Yeah. It's not too bad anyway. Somebody's going to come
Also,
get you.
dude, you can jump off the ski lift.
I don't know,
Yeah.
man. I've seen some of
off.
them
It's
that I
like
wouldn't
powder.
jump off of. There's some of those things are very
Okay,
high.
fair. But
But
yeah, but being stuck in a box over
oh
which
yeah,
you have
screw
no
that.
control.
I would get
gross.
claustrophobic in a broken elevator for sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah. Also, if you're stuck up there a long time, you can pee off
True.
the ski lift.
Hey,
True.
good
Yeah.
point. And
Yeah.
otherwise, you better hope you brought a Gatorade bottle with you, right? All right, George K. Would you rather live in a world with no technology or in a world with no nature?
Ah, no technology.
Yeah, I figured you would go there. I figured you would. That's
Yeah.
the anthropologist coming out in you
Yeah,
too.
all the people who work in tech are.
I
Like,
know,
"Please
right?
get
They're
me
all
out
like,
of
"Hey, I
here."
can't wait to be outside." Okay, George A, be able to talk to your past self or your future self.
Um, I'll be honest with you. Talk to my past self, because like, if I could go back and get myself to not do some of the dumb shit I've done in my life, that would be like real cool. And I played this sci-fi game butterfly effect thing before, hypothetically, and like I could have a way cooler life if I just influence
Yeah,
it the right
yeah.
way.
There you go.
All right, George K. Always be stuck in traffic or always have a terrible internet connection.
Oh, terrible internet connection. Yeah, because that would turn off like all sorts of addictive stuff. I was like, oh, I guess I don't want to check that anymore
Yeah.
because it sucks. But being stuck in traffic is just hell.
All right, George A. Would you rather always know when someone is lying or always be able to get away with lying?
I probably want to know always if someone's lying. I feel like I generally try to live an honest life. Not everyone I've encountered in my time are like that. I think it'd be really cool and could probably save myself a lot of headaches if I could tell that right
Yeah,
away.
totally. Totally.
Nice.
All right, George K. Would you rather have a teleportation device or a time machine?
Oh, I think sci-fi has taught us when you fuck with time, it fucks back. So, um, teleportation is pretty cool.
Would be cool.
Yeah,
All right, cool.
yeah, and low carbon footprint.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, guys. George A, always have a really dumb song stuck in your head or always have an itch you can't reach.
Oh, dumb song, like hands down. Yes.
Screw that itch stuff.
That's right. That's right. I'd go the same way. George K, only be able to walk sideways like a crab or backward like a moonwalk.
Oh. Sideways. Sideways is safer. At least you can
Absolutely.
see kind of where you're headed, and you can still get through
there you go.
doors.
No matter how much weight you put on, right?
Yeah, true.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, George A. Would you rather wear a tuxedo everywhere or be stuck wearing pajamas everywhere?
Oh, dude, pajamas, hands down.
Oh, really? I was gonna say tuxedo.
Bro, no, like, but my legs are so thick, man. Do you understand? Do you know how many pants I've ripped? How many shirts I rip all the time,
That's
dude?
fair.
There
Pajama
you go.
pants.
All right, the comfort level. All right, George K. Would you rather always have Cheeto dust on your fingers or always have popcorn stuck in your teeth?
Oh god, it's awful. Jesus Christ. I'm gonna go with popcorn. I feel like I could get used to that and the annoyance would go down, but like no one wants to get anywhere near someone who's got T-shirts.
You're shaking a hand, leaving it on
That's
them every
true.
time you touch them.
That's true. Like you lick your fingers to get them off, and they just stay there, right? That'd be rough.
Ugh.
Ugh.
Yeah, gross.
All right,
Ugh.
George A. Always have crumbs in your bed, or always have sand in your shoes.
Oh, man, crumbs in the bed because I don't like it when things touch
Oh.
my feet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not. It's just like wet socks are the biggest pet peeve in the world. Sand is
Yeah.
right up there too.
All right, George K. Always have your shoes on the wrong feet, or always wear your shirt backwards.
I wear a lot of T-shirts. I'm gonna go with shirt backwards, assuming that I still continue to wear just
Yeah.
a T-shirt.
That's good. That's a good logical way to think of it. All right, we're going to end it on a hypothetical, and I'm going to give this hypothetical, and you can both answer this, or you can answer it together, or whatever. But this one involves both of you, so it's kind of fitting that you can both just speak out on it when I say it. So, if you guys only had 1 month to prepare, would you attempt to scale Mount Everest together for $1 million? 1 month to prepare.
That's plenty of time. I mean, the Army had me doing way crazier stuff in way less
Well,
time.
you're doing a 5K every morning at 7:30, so yeah, you're pretty hardcore already. I don't think you'd be scared of this.
Yeah, I guess we could go for it, but I'm only very nervous because I used to be a rock climbing instructor, and anyone who thinks they can like beat nature ends up stuck dead in a crevasse, especially on Everest. All those people who are like, I'm really rich, I have this personal trainer, I'm going to do this because I'm going to conquer the mountain. Those are the people who don't turn around when the storm comes and they get frozen to the mountain.
Bro, I'm a big time safety stew, man. I was like 3 points of contact on the armored vehicle at all times, man.
All right, so knowing that my alpine climbing
He's convincing you. He's
Oh, no.
convincing you.
that mindset, yeah, then we can go for it.
George K. Now I'm a little disappointed.
I don't know.
You just got socially engineered.
That's what I was gonna say. He just social engineered you.
That's true. I have been to Everest Base Camp, and I have seen what that place can do to people who are unprepared. But if he's prepared to be safe,
He's like, George A., you're carrying me, man.
Aren't a couple of the milestones as you're traversing that mountain, dead people's boots sticking out of the side of the mountain?
Oh yeah, there's a bunch of trash on the mountain, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff. And every year that the snow melt,
That's crazy, man. That's insane.
All right, guys, I got the last hypothetical. So you are offered a pill that increases your intelligence by 50%, adds 20 years to your lifespan, and increases your wealth by 100%. But it also permanently removes all of your body hair, including your eyebrows. Do you take it?
So you're saying just like richer, healthier with alopecia
and a longer lifespan.
Yeah.
But you could tattoo eyebrows.
Yeah.
Simple fix.
No question.
Yeah.
Let's go for it.
Bro, like seriously, I'm Arab and hairy as hell, man. Look, I'll be real with you. There's not a single woman I've dated as an adult that I have not shed on. So, like, I gotta be real with you. This sounds like a great. You want to give me this limitless pill that's gonna take away my back hair? Bro, I am in.
Yeah, we may not look as good as Bradley Cooper at the end, but like if we can get like kind of
There you go. Yeah.
Jesus, yeah.
I like that. I'm Arab and hairy as hell.
That's hilarious.
That's awesome.
All right, guys. Well, this has been a lot of fun, and we've covered a lot of information. I think there's some really great nuggets of information, that our audience can take away from this episode. So I really thank you guys personally for joining us tonight and just having a good sit down, talking shop type of conversation. Is always fun to do that, especially with like-minded people like you guys, and just enjoy the time we had together, socializing and having community over cyber topics. So thank you for doing that with us.
Yeah, it was a blast. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, guys.
Hopefully when we get out there to Vegas, we can somehow link up. If nothing else, George A., we'll have a beer with you. George K., we'll come up and actually get to meet face to face. And maybe we'll get to hang out at the same social event. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
All
All right. And with that, we'll be signing off. So we'll see you guys next time.
Take care, buddy.
I'm Ashley. I'm an artificially generated avatar with the ability to manipulate your mind via the power of my intelligence botnets. Let me prove it to you. You're about to click on that subscribe button, and then you'll click on the notification bell so you don't miss when Kevin and Jason drop future episodes of the Cyber Distortion podcast. So, go ahead. That's right. Slide your mouse over slowly and gracefully. There you go. Now click. See? That wasn't so bad now, was it? I'd like to thank you for listening to today's amazing podcast episode on YouTube or your favorite audio streaming platform, and don't forget to tell your friends. Oh, and remain diligent, my cyber friends. The world is a very scary place.